Most of you here are probably acquainted with what duelingbook.com is. This was the website pre-Macedon where it was the place to be, where you could play Yu-Gi-Oh, and it was how you got better and improved at the game. And honestly, to some extent, it probably is still kind of one of the best places to actually improve and get better as a player, specifically for the TCG. The problem with this website is that it is a manual simulator. I'm sure most of you are probably accustomed to what this is, but just as a very basic rundown, a manual simulator is nothing like Master Duel. It is a place where you have to physically move the cards around yourself, activate cards by clicking and highlighting them and flashing them up, and then communicating with your opponent. That is right. This website has a chat box. And if this is news to you for whatever reason, you're probably thinking right now that this is definitely an error. This cannot be a good thing. A chat box in a competitive online video game is naturally going to be filled with So eventually this was going to probably snowball an avalanche into a situation one day. Yugioh over on Twitter posted a replay. You could actually watch how a duel unfolded, how the cards were activated and stuff, and there is a full log system and a complete chat box to be able to go through and read what happened. Cool platform. Slur warning. So you've been warned now if you're sensitive to any offensive language. So to clarify and disclaim, this replay and the slurs that you're about to witness on screen are here purely for educational purposes, fully condemned, and are here for documentation reasons. We're going to be going over this and seeing what exactly happened and what this drama was. The slur situation on Dueling Book, unironically, has always been crazy. For those of you who have been following me for long enough time on Dueling Book may have recalled older videos of myself where I have had to actually have community members code and create a browser extension designed specifically, particularly for Dueling Book, so that it can censor the chat, censor my opponent's name, and censor people's usernames who are in the spectator list. Back in my day, when I was one of the very few only people streaming Dueling Book, I would regularly have trolls in the chat create an account on Dueling Book with an obscene racial slur in their name, follow me around, and it would show up on the stream as part of the spectator list in an attempt to get me banned from the Twitch platform. This website has always had this kind of issue. In recent years, they have indeed clamped down on this and have made a very serious headlong effort to address this problem of very virulent toxicity. This is a GOAT format duel on Dueling Book rated, I don't know why Dyer is out here playing DB rated GOAT by the way, versus the opponent of Darkly Big Rabbi. And again, big shoutouts, of course, to you millennial kids who may or may not recall what the Darkly Big Rabbi is. It is one of the most egregious mistranslations of Exodia. In fact, I don't even know if you could really call it Exodia because technically he's separated into 5 different pieces. But this is one of the most infamous knockoff counterfeits of Exodia. Attack Infinity. That's pretty powerful card if you contribute some in this for 2. Weird racial undertones and caricatures aside, this is how the duel unfolded. We've got Darkly Big Rabbi here beginning with the T-set. Going into Rock Bombardment, something you've probably seen quite often in the Dueling Book, duel strategy or something is the first thing you do when you actually try and get gems on a fresh account. Dyer's going to normal summon Cyberstein, pay 5,000 life points, and get immediately hit with, an N-word deck. Hard R, straight double G. Bro just planted that down like it was nothing. Dyer then proceeds to call a judge and stay AFK for the entire time because, well, why would you want to interact with such an individual? Without going over their chat logs too much, because ultimately it really doesn't matter. They're just sitting here yapping and complaining. A judge eventually shows up and says, hi, there's an issue. Dyer says that my opponent used the slur. The judge then proceeds to ask, why did you do nothing for 10 minutes? Dyer says, I am not going to play with a racist, and the judge responds with, that is not an acceptable reason to just AFK. The opponent insta-drops the N-word slur against you, and you're expected to keep playing apparently. Because you see, in order to defeat racism, you must reduce its life points to 0. Now, just for context in person, if you do this in a TCG at an actual real human event with other people, you won't just get disqualified or game lost or match lost. You'll probably be banned for at least a year. I mean, this isn't like the unsporting conduct of like swearing or calling your opponent a dick or an asshole or using some like very fruitful language like that. No, this is a complete firing off of a hard R racial slur, probably one of the worst things you can say to someone in any given context. We've all seen various PewDiePie clips. Now, I'm sure you're about to get real crazy and insane about this for the judge's sake. Now, let's look at what the rules of the Dueling Book article actually says. Now, under the context of unsporting conduct, you can get frozen on your account on Dueling Book for 2 to 7 days for repeated use of offensive language, comma, use of slurs, comma, or threatening, violent, or deplorable conduct. Essentially, what this whole thing boiled down to was that the judge in question here had misinterpreted how the rules here should be applied. They were just under the impression that use of slurs would have to be repeated, as mentioned in the first part of the sentence. So taking that word repeated and then applying it to the rest of the sentence, they interpret it as having to be something that's continuous. And not to defend Darkly Big Rabbi, trust me, I'm really not. The context in which they're trying to provide here is that it was a typo. Yes, they actually meant to say nicer, because the letter C and double G are right next to each other on the keyboard. It just so happened that, you know, a spider crawled across their keyboard at that point. You know, they're trying to create some plausible deniability here before the judge even arrived. And just to really hammer home what this person on Dueling Book as a user is up to, figured I'd see how their current game was going. I hope they get their keyboard fixed soon. Didn't know you were going to use the strat. That's a crazy thing to say as someone who has a Kaiser Coliseum on the field. Consider this your only warning. You do not stop gameplay for non-related issues. You can call a judge, but the game is expected to proceed. Darkly Big Rabbi will be given a UC minor, and you're not allowed to say that. I don't know, they keep trolling with their, like, tiny keyboard excuse. And Dyer proceeds to question this motion and says, a UC minor? That's it? He was calling your deck the word, not you, the person. And yes, while that may be true, there is a very clear insinuation when using that word with a complete stranger. Now again, not to dumpster on the judge or anything, it is kind of implied somewhat and interpreted potentially by the rules that it would have to be a repeated offense. Obviously, this context matters completely different in real life, but when you're on the internet, there is a degree of, shall we say, leniency for this type of thing. Not saying that's a good thing, but the logic as to why gameplay should occur for non-gameplay related reasons is because of the fact that people usually just instantly pause and stop duels for absolutely nothing. My opponent said I don't know how to play my deck. That's a UC minor. My opponent said I'm bad. That's a UC minor. I'm waiting for a judge. Dueling Book players are very, very petty individuals who will hold up a game for any reason whatsoever. And I'm not justifying the judge's answer here. They are indeed incorrect, and in hindsight have indeed actually gone ahead and realized that this was an incorrect application of the rules. This is just for you to get some context. What should have occurred here very blatantly and explicitly, as per Dueling Book judges' verdicts from the hierarchies that I've spoken to, Distant Coder, for example, went over this on his stream, this should have been an on-the-spot account freeze. There is very clearly a line and a difference between mean words and hard R racial slur to a stranger. Dyer then proceeds to try and appeal this, but the judge says, what exactly are you trying to appeal? The fact that this is getting the most minor warning possible rather than a freeze. You're not allowed to appeal a lack of punishment, so I'll be denying this appeal. So this is technically true in the world of judging. You are not allowed to appeal a light punishment. You are allowed to appeal a ruling question, tournament policy, but very specifically, your opponent not getting a harsh enough punishment would probably be categorized as sharking. Even though, very clearly, this opponent deserves way worse than just a UC minor. Why is it a UC minor than a major in your judgment in issuing this warning, and why is it that the punishment you chose to give? Please proceed with the duel. You are not allowed to appeal the lack of punishment. I'm asking you to clarify. I have answered, and you have 1 minute to make a play. And so essentially, this just boils down to some back and forth here, where Dyer, I suppose, protests and goes AFK here, explaining that you're kind of going by the letter of the law rather than the spirit of the law. And of course, clearly, Darkly Big Rabbi here, who was definitely saying the word nicer, hits her with a wrecked there, just so you can really see the sincerity behind the genuine mistake they made when they used that word. All we can really take away from this is that HP laptop products are definitely not worth using. There's no world in where this language is ever acceptable, whether in your personal life, especially not during a Yu-Gi-Oh duel. But unfortunately, this judge has been on the receiving end of some Twitter hate because of what's happened here. All I'm gonna say is thank God for Master Duel. Although a live chat would create great content in 90% of circumstances. Unfortunately, this is probably the 10%. The moral of the story is don't be racist and mean to each other. And hopefully Dueling Book continues to clamp down on this poor behavior and enforces the rules correctly. It is genuinely a great platform. It is a fantastic learning place for TCG-specific gameplay. A massive element of TCG is not being carried by triggers and toggles with glowing buttons that Master Duel allows you to be reminded of at any one time. But obviously, it's a shame that this is a massive problem with the website, and it is being addressed. Thanks everyone for watching this video. Please do not brigade against anyone mentioned in this one. Keep the comments civil. I'll see you in the next one.